Hey, Brian. Just, I guess, what went into your interest in bringing Cody back and just what got this deal done in the end?
I mean, he's a hell of a baseball player. Really talented, multi-positional talented. Um, Middle lineup type bat. Extremely intelligent player. Just provides a lot of security, a lot of flexibility, a lot of consistency. Um, so there was no reason not to try to be in you know the attempt to bring him back. It just it's you versus the marketplace, and not knowing where that's going to go. But ultimately, it's a really high end quality player that we're excited to retain.
Thank you.
Joyce, please unmute.
Brian, just how would you describe the negotiations and taking this long and at this point in the offseason not knowing for sure until, recently whether you would have Cody at your disposal?
I mean, it's you have to go through the process. We're negotiating with a Titan, and Scott Boris. And the marketplace. So it took me and Hal and Randy Levine, and so three of us to try to figure out a solution that would make sense for everybody involved, and try to outpace the market. Because clearly Cody would be a player in demand because again he's a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of different things that are important to help you win games, and so we just stayed on it, but there was always uncertainty. When you go into the marketplace, you just it's safer to bet the field because you just have it's so unknowing what's going to happen. But thanks to Hal Steinbrenner, especially and the Steinbrenner family, they allowed us to stay in it in a very significant way, and the communication level with Scott Boris was obviously always high caliber. And so it doesn't really matter how long it takes. It ultimately matters if you can land where you want to land. And we were able to retain a very important player that we think can serve us well as we move forward. And he was an important player last year to the level of success we had.
We'll go to Jack Curry.
Brian, I know you've already described a little bit about the negotiations, but as you reflect on them, would you be able to share if there were any watershed moments where you finally thought maybe the ball that had been on the 10 had now moved to the 1 yard line?
I mean, ultimately, when you start going from macro to micro details, that makes you feel like you might be in a sweet spot. But until you're done, you're never done. That's the one thing you always have to be careful with when you're trying to make trade acquisitions, or if you're trying to make conclude a free agent sign, because it just takes somebody else a phone call away to either catch up or exceed to where you might be, or be in a more attractive situation for the player that earned the right to be in free agency. So but ultimately, I guess a little bit of a small smell test is when you go from macro conversations to some micro conversations about details that to finish something off makes you feel like you're potentially entering the end zone there, but until you're actually there, there's a risk.
Thank you.
Go to John Schwartz.
Hey Brian, when you're out in the market, how much of an advantage is it knowing that you have Aaron Judge on the roster, and how do you leverage that when you're making a pitch to guys that you're going after?
It's hard to say. I've never been a professional baseball player as a free agent, so clearly, you know, um, you'd like to think, Aaron playing alongside an Aaron Judge is attractive, but ultimately, as a player enters and earn the right to be in free agency, it's a long process. Some don't ever even get a chance to get there, and those who get a chance to earn that right, deserve to obviously, you know, learn what their market values are in different locations, and talk to their families about where they want to lay their head moving forward for a period of time. And so yes, having one of the greatest players on the planet, is an attractive uh, component. I think the New York Yankees, with the history and tradition in the great city of New York, is an attractive situation as well. but ultimately, I think those are all, points that, we have in our favor, but the end result turns out to be really the negotiations on the contract compared to others, whatever they're offering. And then, players are going to have to make a decision in the end, but certainly having Aaron Judge, on our side of the fence, is definitely something that's an advantage for us because, he's going to help us win a lot of games.
Thank you.
Go to Brian Hoke.
Hey, Brian. I wanted to ask you about the hiring, I guess. What led you to stay in-house at the end of the search?
I'm sorry, you broke up a
Oh, yeah,
little
he
bit.
broke up. I think you want to know about Garza, the promotion
Mario
of
Garza.
Garza. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did an extensive interview process, and ultimately, when you're making decisions like this, they're always tough decisions to make. But Mario is someone we're very familiar with. Speaks Spanish. Has worked in our player development department for quite some time. He's an amazing human being. The connectability is a really high character trait for him. So he's a great baseball guy that has great personal skills. As I said, as well as speaking Spanish, he is a great evaluator of talent by the way, which is important clearly in this category. And he knows our systems. He already knows all the personnel that we want to have whether it's domestic amateur or international amateur. You want evaluation, you want fire hoses connecting to performance science, to analytics, to what our player development specialists in catching, pitching, infield, outfield, and hitting, what they believe are qualities that they can improve upon, and what they also believe are qualities that are not improvable. And so he's already well versed in all of our systems, and that will give him a head start already as we try to relaunch that department and move forward. So we're excited by the hire and by the person, and we look forward to him doing really great work for the Yankees.
You used the word relaunch. Do you see big changes coming?
Again, just looking for better outcomes. He's gonna reinvent that department, and I look forward to seeing where it takes us. But the end result, we're looking to get really positive results.
Phillips, please unmute.
Hey, Brian, thanks for taking the time. You guys traded for Chivi earlier today. Just what do you guys like about him, and what do you think he can be away from course?
Asked about him, obviously, with the previous regime under Billy Schmidt, and then when they transitioned with Paul DePodesta and Josh Burns, who I've dealt with over the course of time in my career. I reintroduced his name amongst others of players that we would have an interest in, and he's a 23-year-old power arm that's got a tool package that's pretty exciting. He's got some flexibility because there's an option remaining in his profile, and so he's got a year of service, some experience. He's got a tremendous fastball, changeup, and a slider, and I think there's a lot to work with there. And so we look forward to putting him into our pitching program and seeing where that takes him. And then whether it's assisting us, at any point in the major league level, certainly that's the ultimate goal. But we just think we've just added a really nice quality arm to already an array of quality arms that we have. And as you know, you never have enough pitching. So we were happy to be able to find a match with the Rockies that hopefully is a win-win for both organizations.
Just to follow up on that, are you comfortable with the bullpen that you have in place, or is that a group that you're still actively trying to add to?
I'd say the canvas is never finished. The process is always going to be evaluating, if there's better out there, that's the job at hand, and whether it's the bullpen or anything else. So as we enter spring training, We definitely are a different bullpen right now than we were last year, as you know, because we've had some departures. But we also have some young pups pushing up the ladder. We have a Rule 5 pick we selected. We just made this addition. So I think it's a work in progress with a lot of quality choices. And some might be emerging, talented players from our system. Some might be more imports like today, could be. I just say stay tuned. We added some guys at the deadline last year with Camilla Duvall and Bednar, and we have a lot of quality young arms that are high caliber that are going to try to push their way in the mix, and we're going to continue to evaluate all choices that come our way. So it is a work in progress, but I do think that we have a lot of quality choices at the very least that we can fall back on if we do nothing more. But the job at hand is to see if we can improve in any aspect of the roster that we can, and we'll continue to look at that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
Dan Martin, go ahead.
Hey, Brian, any update on Anthony Volpe?
Yeah, I'm here in Tampa, and I see Anthony every day. He's doing great. His rehab is doing well. He's in good spirits, and he's looking forward to, getting back and joining us when he's 110%, so we can deploy him properly. So, but so far so good. No issues on his rehab protocols.
What's the timeline coming up for him?
I'm not going to provide a timeline, but I'll let Booney and the staff provide that when spring training is up and running. But he's here working his tail off as expected and with a smile on his face and fully committed. So I look forward to him rejoining us at shortstop at some point, sooner than later. But I don't want to put a time frame on it.
Thanks.
Kirshner, you're next. Go ahead.
Hey, Cash, I'm going to ask you a similar question I asked Aaron, but with you guys appearing to mostly be running it back with a similar roster, what makes you believe that you can get better results this year with that same roster?
First, we have good players. It's a collection of really talented players. It's not the same roster. I would differ there. We have some players at some point returning from the IL that are, important players. Garrett Cole being obviously one of them, but we've had some additions, from the second half that, got their feet wet with the Yankees, some with success, some with, failures or success. But, once they'll now be in a position to join us with their feet on the ground and getting their sea legs under them, with the manager too, learning how to utilize these guys and where they slot and everything else. So, and I use the shortstop that'll be manning shortstop as an example until Volpe's back. We added a lot of weapons at the deadline, and all finding their proper slots, maybe, and how to be utilized and deployed, and also growing pains of competing in the New York arena, getting some exposure to postseason baseball, especially in the American League. I think all that will serve us well. So I disagree. It's the same team running it back. It's going to be some differences, and the competition is going to be different too. In some cases, some teams got better. In other cases, some teams you could argue maybe got a little worse. Our division's the best in baseball. But long story short, one series, make or break is not going to define what we think our capabilities are. I do, and we all understand it. In postseason baseball, you got to bring your best baseball every series, and if you don't, you're going home. But doesn't mean that we weren't capable of great things. We just didn't get the job done in that time frame against the Toronto Blue Jays, the defending American League champs, with which they've earned everybody's respect in the industry. So we're all gunning for them first and foremost in the division as well as the league. And ultimately, the big prize is what the Dodgers possess, is the World Championship trophy. But not afraid to run the quality of talented roster of players that we do have. I think we've been consistent with that throughout the entire winter. Anytime I've been openly willing to challenge anybody that we don't have a championship caliber roster and team. And it's our job to try to find ways to make it better along the way. And so with the young pups that have earned the right climbing up the ladder a little bit more, that are hungry and thirsty to push their way into the mix, with some of the guys that were out of commission on the IL, some of the new additions, whether it's, some of these big young arms that we just acquired, one from Colorado, one from the Marlins, a couple of weeks ago. Again, it's just going to be a little bit of a different mix, a little different feel. Everything's different. It's a different year. And we're looking for a different result, meaning a better result. So I guess stay tuned and see where it takes us. We're excited by what we have and who they are. But I think you've heard me say many times, it doesn't matter what we say, it matters what we do. So we're looking forward to getting everybody to spring training and getting them working together and hopefully remaining healthy and playing to the best of their abilities, and see where that takes us.
One or two more. Peter, go ahead.
Brian, just wanted to ask you just where how Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon are doing in their off seasons. They're working their way back. Just how is that going?
So far, so good. Carlos is here in Tampa, and I think Garrett will be joining sooner than later as well. And so no problem so far. No surprises so far in their rehab protocols. If anything, you got to, these are super competitors. If anything, you got to try to slow them down and protect themselves from themselves, per se, because they always want to do more sooner than later. They always feel like they're capable of doing things quicker than their timelines. And that's true of, you're dealing with these alpha dogs that are ready to conquer the world at all times. So, our medical team and rehab staff and the doctors involved are always, that's part of their process too, is making sure that, the baby steps or the every step in this process gets hit first. And, but when guys feel so good, they want to jump a few steps ahead of time and trying to keep the reins on to make sure that, they stay in the proper time frame. So we get the ultimate result in the end, which is, pure health the rest of the way. That's the ultimate goal, but they're doing great so far.
Take a final one from Greg Joyce. Greg, go ahead.
And adding Ryan Weathers, we haven't talked to you since then. What did you like about him, and what do you see for him, adding him to your staff?
Big arm. He's really talented. He's got control, obviously. So I feel like we have a lot of high-end caliber talented players, whether you're talking about Luis Hill or Will Warren, some of these names have done some things, Schlittler, Lagrange and Elmer Rodriguez, and, they're obviously pushing their way up the ladder. And, so there's an assortment of choices, and the job is to provide as many as you can possibly provide, both in the rotation and bullpen, because you're going to need more than you ultimately have typically. So it was a great opportunity to add a high caliber arm and turn it over to our pitching personnel. I met Ryan Weathers for the first time the other day. He was here in Tampa. He returned home to Alabama, and he's going to come back now with his wife and settle here shortly the rest of the way. And so he's excited to be here. Our guys have been excited working with him, and hopefully we together can unlock some things. And he, his healthier years are right in front of him. Hopefully here in Pinstripes, because the talent is never been in question. So we're just excited to have another quality arm to the roster. And he also has flexibility. He's got control years. He's also got options. And so looking forward to him, providing another choice, for our manager and our pitching coaches.